In the fast-changing world of computer technology, Steve Crawford's Macintosh is basically a dinosaur. When he bought it, no one had even thought up the term Y2K.
This computer's 10 years old. So people were not even thinking about the implications of the turn of the century and what that would have on the software at that time.
Now the question is, what will happen to Crawford's computer, as well as anyone else's, when we hit the year 2000?
It's not going to fizzle and fry and smoke and blow up, not at all.
Professor Bill Eden says the first thing to look at is when your computer and your software were made. Pre-1997, and you may run into trouble.
For those applications that have to do with date calculations, finance, accounting, some spreadsheet kinds of applications, then they may have problems.
If you think you might have problems with software, Eden says the best thing to do is go on the web. Microsoft has a whole site dedicated to answering questions about its software and the year 2000.
And we'll simulate the year 2000.
You can also check your computer to see what will happen when 1999 turns to 2000. Be sure to close any programs and back up any vital stored information. Then you can set your computer's internal clock forward for a trial. If 2000 doesn't come up, you probably want to update your computer. There are thousands of websites out there that offer information on upgrades. Steve Crawford says he plans on saving all of his important data to disk this coming New Year's Eve. Then he'll log on in 2000 and see what happens. The cooling towers of 3 Mile Island rise out of the scenery of the Susquehanna River. For the people who live around here, TMI is as much a part of the landscape as the river itself.
Well, just like everyday thing to us.
But as the year 2000 approaches, some wonder what's being done to get ready for the computer bug.
You know, if electricity would go out, and everything would shut down, you never know if something could float in the air.
It's a serious problem. We're taking it very seriously, and we're doing everything that we feel is appropriate and prudent to be Y2K ready.
Tom Kaufman is a spokesman for TMI. He says they've been working on the problem since 1996, and they now have 12 people working full-time to get the computers ready.
We've gone out and assessed the equipment, determined what equipment would have Y2K concerns, and now we're actually testing the equipment and determining whether or not it is Y2K ready.
All of TMI's knobs, levers, and buttons are connected to the computer system, but most functions can be handled manually.
If something goes wrong with the computer, the operators, in our case, can take over manual control, disengage a computer, and take over the manual control.
That way, if the worst-case scenario did happen, someone could turn off and cool down the reactor without the help of a computer.
23,000. That's how many pieces of equipment your hospital has being controlled by computer chips. That has some potential patients feeling a bit uneasy.
I'm concerned no matter where I would be, but I guess especially in a hospital where they rely so much on technology and computers.
York Hospital is trying to ease those fears. The facility expects to spend between $6 and $7 million to make its computers and biomedical equipment Y2K compliant.
It's things such as anesthesia machines, heart monitors, heart defibrillators, EKG machines.
Even refrigerators. The hospital began updating its equipment more than a year ago. Everything appears to be running smoothly. These green stickers mean the equipment is ready for the millennium. In fact, officials say they've experienced only minor problems on 1% of the equipment.
So the failures that we're seeing are not catastrophic kind of failures that would injure or harm a patient.
The hospital expects to be finished testing its medical equipment by the end of June. Officials say this is one bug they should be able to cure before it even enters the building.
They don't have to be overly concerned about being a patient in the hospital on January 1st of 2000.
This intersection at Market and 32nd Streets is one of the busiest in Camp Hill. More than 80,000 vehicles pass through here. If the red light stopped working, there could be a huge mess.
We could have some real problems here. We'd have backlogs or backups from here probably to the Maryland line.
That nightmare could happen if the computer chips that operate red lights are not Y2K ready. PennDOT wants to make sure local areas are prepared. Officials are sending out surveys like this one to find out.
We plead with all the municipalities, get that back to us. We want to work with them. They in many cases own traffic signals that may have a problem. We're asking them to take a look.
Camp Hill officials are already ahead of the game. Most of the traffic signals are only about 2 years old.
Most of the stuff has tested out so far with no problems.
Camp Hill officials say there shouldn't be any problems with the traffic equipment on New Year's Eve, but just in case, they're going to have technicians on standby. Traffic is flowing smooth for now, and PennDOT hope it stays that way. In Camp Hill, Catrice White, Fox 43 News at 10.
Congress is set to the task of answering the question, will the Y2K computer bug bring about Armageddon, or is all the hype overrated? In releasing a Y2K report card, one senator said the problem will be nothing more than a bump in the road.
We do not at the moment expect that this will be, as the websites are calling it, Teotawaki. That's the acronym for the end of the world as we know it.
But the lawmakers did admit Y2K is too serious to be ignored. Potential problems, even shutdowns of telephone systems, the food industry, power and water, banking, even nuclear bombs going off on their own could all plague the world on January 1st.
The task of ensuring there is no significant impairment of the department's ability to execute its missions is one of the most complex challenges ever faced by DoD managers.
The Senate report indicated there is a low to medium probability for most of the problems that could arise in the U.S. from the computer bug, but many other countries are not ready. Their economic systems could likely fail, leading to riots. Problems internationally could also have a significant impact on the U.S. pharmaceutical industry, especially with medications that come from overseas.
These medical delivery systems are in trouble, that they are not prepared to respond to the Y2K issues. As much as 80 to 90% of our doctors' offices are not compliant. 64% of hospitals still have serious problems with the Y2K issues.
And then there's the question of stockpiling. Should you begin to keep reserves of food, water, cash? The Senate is recommending that you prepare as you would for a snowstorm or a hurricane, supplies that would last you a few days, but that it's not necessary to go overboard. On Capitol Hill, Lisa Lee, Fox 43 News at 10.
Y2K is an issue. Y2K problem is a people problem.
Although the York County Emergency Management Agency expects to hit a few glitches when we roll into the next millennium, some people are still continuing to prepare for the worst.
It's making people buy water, buy generators. You know, they're stocking up. You know, we got this big problem coming, you know.
I know some people moved to Alaska because of this.
EMA officials are finding similar concerns.
We found some people who were hoarding anywhere from 40 to 100 gallons of gasoline because they bought a generator and they want to make sure they had plenty of gasoline. Well, 1 gallon of gasoline is equivalent to 8 sticks of dynamite.
And all it takes is a simple spark to spell danger. Now, officials aren't saying don't worry about Y2K, just take simple measures like buying bottled water, flashlights, and generators, but only when installed by a professional. There are also ways to help stop overloading certain systems. Now, when it comes to ringing in the new year, the Emergency Management Agency wants you to resist the urge of picking up the phone to spread some New Year's cheer. Instead, wait until New Year's Day after 8 a.m.
When people started to call everybody else, you know, to wish them a Happy New Year, well, that can bring the phone system down real quick.
So, bottom line when it comes to Y2K?
Be prepared, but don't panic.
Heather Will, Fox 43 News at 10.
And I said, what are they talking about? We have to take all of our electronics home? They're making us do this? What is this talking about?
Freshman Ashley Petrolak's first reaction to the school's notice about Y2K preps was not uncommon. The request for the students to remove possessions from their rooms during holiday break sent a buzz through campus.
A lot of people misunderstood it, figured that the college was actually making everyone take all of your belongings home.
And I asked a couple of questions myself and then realized that it's basically just a caution for the school to take, so that they're not responsible for anything if it does go wrong.
Basically, the school suggests removing all computers and electronic equipment, as well as valuables and sentimental things that can't be replaced.
if something happens to the building, it's going to be a water damage. And when we have water damage, we'll probably ruin parts of the building along with some of their belongings.
Elizabethtown has a 10-member Y2K committee. It's worked on compliance for the past 2 years.
The concept of the embedded chips, dealing with software running security devices, whether alarms would work, whether elevators would work.
The committee says it's as ready as it can be for the coming millennium and any glitches it might bring. Some committee members will ring in their new year right here on campus.
We'll go around the site and we'll check for utilities. We'll go to the substation, see that we have power.
We've done an awful lot of work to make sure that the entire Y2K issue is just that, an issue and not a problem.
And to make sure no Y2K bugs slip by at the last minute, the York County EMA staff will head to work at 7 a.m. on December 31st.
And the job of the people that are on that day shift is basically to monitor what's happening as the timeline comes around the globe. If there's any reported problems, do we have similar situations that we would have maybe, let's say, 12 to 14 hours to make some correction to?
By 9 o'clock New Year's Eve, the York County Annex building will be fully staffed and ready to tackle any problems.
York County 911.
The 911 center will run 2 continuous 12-hour shifts through January 3rd.
The city's on-call constable is unavailable.
On the local level, only 40% of the municipalities sent back this Y2K compliance form.
Many of them don't have computers, so they figured if I don't have a computer and I don't buy a computer, I don't have a problem. But then we refreshed their memories about chips and what pieces of equipment they may have that have microchips in.
The EMA staff has now been in contact with the other 60% that never responded to the questionnaire and feel confident with the feedback.
I don't anticipate any problems, but we have to be prepared, and because that's our job, being prepared.
How are you today? Paper or plastic? It's a busy day at the Giant Food Store in Upper Allen Township.
We came in just for a couple of things, a little fruit, some hot dogs, canned soup, tomato sauce.
Last minute shopping for New Year's. We want to get our pork and sauerkraut, which we have every year.
But this year is different. When the clock strikes 12, we'll begin a new year and a new century. Computer glitches could leave some without electricity. Experts recommend buying extra canned goods and water, but these shoppers aren't worried.
Yeah, you just prepare for a storm, that's it. Yeah, nothing unusual, nothing out of the ordinary.
We didn't feel that we wanted to lay out any extra money or to go to the added inconvenience of trying to store things that we might not use eventually anyway.
Water sales have increased dramatically since last week, but for most shoppers, picking up an extra gallon is just part of their normal shopping list.
Because we live out here in farm country, we do have to have treated water.
I did pick up a couple of half gallons of water, more so because we woke up the other Sunday morning and the water was out.
In fact, most people seem to think Y2K is being made into a bigger issue than it really is.
I think they're blowing it way out of proportion.
I'm not going crazy. I'm just buying water, hot dogs, and fruit today.
In Cumberland County, Jamie Garland, Fox 43 News at 10.
For most of us, the millennium is the calendar event of our lifetime. Yet why, with so many choices on where to ring in the year 2000, is the #1 pick to stay at home?
Thank you for calling AAA Travel. This is Chris speaking. How may I help you?
If it's fear of what the Y2K bug may do, travel agencies like AAA say enormous amounts of money have been spent to make sure computer problems don't spoil any plans.
As far as Y2K compliancy, I would be able to assure them that the cruise ships and the airlines have all upgraded their computer systems and that everything is up and running.
AAA believes high prices, not computers, have played more of a role in people staying home.
Normally, this time of year is much more expensive than if you were to travel, a couple of months from now. But the millennium, they just really put it through the roof.
Now, for a while, travel expenses were hiked 2 to 3 times their normal rate, and people were willing to pay. But eventually, the reality of those prices got the best of them.
People got sticker shock. They really did, and it was like, forget it, it's not worth it.
Now, many resorts and cruise lines have dropped their prices to ensure people get the most bang for their buck. Heather Will, Fox 43 News at 10.
This is a one-time affair, and we're public servants, and our duty is to the public first, and we can celebrate later.
Which is why the city is spending $46,000 Friday night in extra personnel. Senior management and operating personnel will be on the clock, as well as 50 extra police and firefighters.
We just want to be prepared. Elevator rescues, the fireworks are going to take some additional people to make sure that there's not a problem there.
Aside from extra staffing, the city has extensive security and emergency plans in place.
I can tell you we've been very focused on doing risk assessment and identifying anything that would even remotely suggest a risk or a problem for Harrisburg. And I'm happy to tell you that to date, there is nothing. I mean, the radar screen is clear.
However, the mayor asks residents not to immediately pick up the telephone after midnight. Keep the lines clear. Also, avoid using elevators right away. Send the car on a few dry runs first.
The big unknown in all of this is going to be the billions of microchips that exist in practically every piece of appliance or apparatus.
Regardless, the Emergency Operations Center and its task forces will be ready for emergencies in or out of the city.
Certainly with the amount of technology and things like that in the state, mixing chemicals, it's hard to say what might happen. So those types of things will be available, and we'll have people dedicated to that task force response.
Computers are like a member of the family these days, but if you're concerned the end of 1999 might mean the end of your techno friend, experts say don't panic.
PCs, we haven't found that many problems. I mean, the hardware itself, very few problems compared to what people were estimating.
If you're still worried, Andy Welber with A&L Computer Services in York County recommends downloading Microsoft's Y2K test.
They're compliant. It'll check your system out. It'll do everything I'm going to do, and it won't cost you anything.
What concerns Andy most are viruses. They might already be sitting in your computer, and it's believed that many are programmed to attack once the clock strikes 12.
Some of them are pretty nasty. Others aren't. Others are for the most part, harmless. Your machine won't run right while they're in and active, but once you get rid of them, everything's fine.
You can buy an antivirus package, but the simplest defense is just turn off your computer for the weekend.
If it's programmed to go off at a certain time on a certain date, if your machine's off and you don't turn it on until after that date, it's not going to do anything. It will probably just lay dormant.
Our experts recommend hitting the off switch before leaving work, too. It might prevent a headache Monday morning, and so will backing up valuable files.
Any financial information, important data, if you do printouts, personal records.
Hoping you're out enjoying the party. Just a note to say Happy New Year. Hoping you've survived the end of the world in Y2K.
Antivirus specialist Ken Bechtel spent the morning monitoring the New Year's arrival on the other side of the globe, then talking with colleagues already living in 2000. Minutes after midnight in Japan, he got this message.
Office. So far, everything is working okay. All the ATMs are working. All servers, all PCs. Talking about lifelines, all trains, electricity, water, all okay. Looks like we survived Y2K.
Ken's main concern is about a dozen or so viruses. Authors programmed them to attack at the stroke of midnight.
Let's mix in the virus damage with the Y2K stuff. Nobody's going to know where it came from.
This elf bowling game was emailed to a lot of people over the holidays, and it's rumored that it would detonate a virus at a specific date and time. Now, if you want to keep the game but you're concerned about that, what you should do is get rid of any email you received with the game and then download it from its original source.
Vendors have patches to kill the known viruses. Still, you should back up files and keep antivirus software updated. By mid-morning, it looked like the Y2K bug had a bigger bark than bite.
Time in Korea is now 0020 a.m. on January 1. Looks like everything is working well. Thanks again. Happy New Year. Yeah!
Kristen Fallon, Fox 43 News at 10.
Inspire here in Pennsylvania that's going to be smooth. We're going to be safe, and we feel ready.
The lieutenant governor says the investment was worth it. Nearly $60 million over 3 years to fix hardware and upgrade software to prepare for Y2K.
From my standpoint, it was the sensible thing to do.
So far at Pima's Nerve Center, no major disruptions, but they are prepared. Security is tight as these screens are monitored nonstop. Agencies are in close contact with all 67 counties.
So if something crops up out there, I would suspect that we'll know within minutes.
They're watching for everything from a road closure to a utility system failure to celebrations getting out of hand.
Because there are potential areas where people could party a little too hardy, I guess I would say, and we need to keep a tab on that.
TTC Command Center.
At the State Technology Command Center, the worst may be over, but they still check every computer, from the Department of Agriculture to the Department of Corrections.
If there are any problems, we'll let you guys know.
Even though the countdown clock has stopped ticking, concerns over Y2K are not over yet. As a matter of fact, what happens over the next 60 days will be crucial.
A lot of the computer systems are used for cyclical functions like billing, putting out invoices, making certain payments. So we won't feel 100% confident until we've gone through a few of those cycles.
While the government monitors its computers, private companies hire their own experts.
Websites are getting hacked, and there are new viruses discovered every day.
At ICSA, they study viruses with the watchful eye of a surgeon, including this elf bowling game that was rumored to be a virus but turned out to be a hoax.
It created almost as big of a problem if it would have been a virus because there was mass chaos.
This company updates its website to let people know if a virus is hype or if it's hot. Just as state workers monitor their 40 agencies and feel somewhat confident,
we really feel like we've slam dunked Y2K.
Everyone is being warned to stay on guard. In Dauphin County, Diane Harrigan, Fox 43 News at 10.